Hello everyone and welcome to an incredible game from round 3 of this year's Djerba International Chess Festival. We have a clash between World Junior Champion from 2023 Andria Maurizzi and the legend himself, Vasyl Ivanchuk. Now, you know me, whenever Ivanchuk is playing, I always check out all of his games, and if there's a nice one to show, I always show it. And this is definitely one such game. And Marc Andria is not just a World Junior Champion. If you remember last year, he almost won the Challenger section of Tata Steel and almost qualified for the Masters. I think he was leading for maybe up to the last 2 rounds, and then he was overtaken in first place by Leon-Luc Mendonça. But yeah, an amazing player, but he is facing a legend here. So let's see what happens. Marc Andria with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5. Vasyl counters the e4 expansion with the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3, we have pawn to d6 and d4. Striking in the center, we have captures, and knight to f6. Knight to c3, a6, we have the Knight of Sicilian. What more could we ask for? And already a surprise on move 6. Now, I always like to mention when I cover a Knight of Sicilian that when black plays a6, you can literally make any move in this position with white and it has a name, because this game is so analyzed and everyone, people have tried everything to surprise their opponents. Of course, there are the main moves, but there are also moves like Rook G1. This is like the 10th or 11th most popular continuation. That's still very good and people still play it. But here, Marc Andria goes for the 12th most popular continuation, and that is Knight to b3. And here, okay, he wants to take Ivanchuk out of book, but as you'll see with the situation on the clock, it is not that easy to take Ivanchuk out of book. So Vasyl continues, knight to c6, bishop to e3 and pawn to e6, and immediate pawn to g4. Okay, but Vasyl obviously not faced, he just continues, pawn to b5, not burning any time, pawn to g5, knight d7, and now there is a game, and I think maybe Marc Andria was preparing for this game, maybe having that game as a role model, because Vasyl already had this position in 2023 in the Salamanca Masters tournament. He had it against Kirill Alekseyenko and he lost. Vasyl lost this position with black against Alekseyenko, and Alekseyenko played bishop to g2 in this position. But Marc Andria does not follow in the footsteps of that game. He plays pawn to a3, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. And with this move, it is the first time that Vasyl burns time in the game, and he plays rook to b8, spending 10 minutes on this move. So okay, it definitely makes sense. You want to get the rook off of this diagonal, maybe prepare some pawn to b4. It's a nice move. So okay, let's see what happens. Pawn to h4. Strengthening the g5 pawn and also preparing to further push those kingside pawns. Bishop to e7 and pawn to f4. We have pawn to b4, captures, and now bishop to g2. We have knight to b6, okay, just nicely developing pieces, maybe preparing knight to c4. This knight would be very, very annoying on c4, so of course Marc Andria stops it. We have knight to a5, controlling c4, and now pawn to d5. And we often say if black gets to play d5 when playing the Sicilian, black has, well, at least equalized the game. We have castles kingside and queen to c7. We have pawn to f5 and Vasyl boldly castles in front of those expanded pawns. Now, looking at this, you might be thinking, well, isn't this a bit too risky for white to play? But yeah, but this is 2025. If if the engine says this is okay, then you can play it, and this is in fact perfectly fine. So okay, we have pawn to f6, challenging the bishop, but now bishop to c5, stopping captures, because bishop captures on e3 would come with check. So first bishop captures on c5, queen captures on c5, also comes with check, king to h1, and now pawn to g6. And now, okay, you stop the expansion, no more useful advancing moves. Maybe h5 can be played, maybe right away, maybe prepare it. But what you really want to do is get your queen over to h6. If you can do that, you won the game. So that's the idea. Or you open up the h file and then somehow bring the queen and rook over to the h file. But it's going to be a little bit tricky as you've opened up your king so much. So what happens here? Queen to d2, and now we have bishop to b7. Now the key move to consider here is pawn to d4, definitely, because whenever you play against a Najdorf and there's a knight on b4, you know that your c2 pawn will be weak. You're not going to be able to move the c3 knight. Usually there's a rook on c8, not on b8, and there's a lot of pressure on this c2 pawn. So this knight cannot move for most of the game. But here d4 would be very, very interesting. The problem, and I think why Vasyl decided not to play it, is this knight to b3 move, which attacks the queen and the pawn, and then you have to basically agree to a draw. And as you'll see in this game, Vasyl most certainly does not want a draw, because here you just trade everything. D captures on c3, b captures first with an attack on the knight. Now the knight will attack the queen, knight c4, c captures on b4, we're going to trade queens, captures, and now there's going to be a passed c pawn to worry about. Knight captures on f1, bishop captures, and okay, it's pretty cool position where black is up the exchange, but there's the strong bishop, the a6 pawn is attacked, the c pass pawn is marching forward. Objectively, you can play it, but it's equal. If black finds rook to b4, then it is just, you know, completely equal. But, you know, you have to play it perfect, otherwise you're not equal. So Vasyl plays bishop to b7, puts the bishop on this very strong diagonal, and knight captures on b7. We have a trade, rook captures on b7, and now e captures on d5. We have e captures and queen to f2, offering a queen trade. Rook to c7, accepting the trade, but Vasyl wants it to happen on c5. Queen captures, we have rook captures, and now rook to f4, attacking the knight, while also putting pressure on the a6 pawn. And okay, you could just capture on c2 and call it a day. Like knight captures on c2, we're going to trade rook captures on a6, something like d4. And after rook captures on b6, captures, and captures, we trade everything, 3 pawns on the king side each. You know, we call it a day. But as I've said, Vasyl does not want a draw. He wants to play as long as there's even the tiniest resource that allows you to continue playing the game. And obviously, so does Marc Andria. We have pawn to a6. He defends the knight, and also the pawn is nicely defended here. But Marc Andria says, if you want to play, I want to play as well. Plays rook captures on a5. He sacrifices the exchange for the potential very strong passed b and c pawn if he can eliminate the d pawn. So what happens now? Rook captures on a5, rook captures on b4, and now we have this very nice rook to b8 move that is not very precise by Vasyl. Again, this d4 move has to be played. It looks like a silly move to play because you're just giving up your pawn, but you're going to lose it either way, and this way you can improve your position. After rook c5, there's no way for white to make any sort of pressure here. You cannot advance the b pawn as the knight would hang. You cannot move the knight because the c2 pawn hangs, and this is just a dead draw. There is literally nothing white can do here to even stir some trouble. However, after rook captures on b4, Vasyl played rook to b8. It makes sense. If he trades down and exchanges rooks, then there's no way he loses this game. But he misses knight captures on d5. And now, okay, his plan was knight d7, but now Marc Andria does not trade rooks. Instead, he finds this beautiful resource of rook to d4. And this means that Vasyl will not be winning either of the pawns, because now if you capture the pawn, there's knight e7 check, and you just blunder that knight. And now, of course, white is completely winning. So you have to improve your position. King to f8 is played, and now the move that wins every game, pawn to b4. And okay, it's still not maybe lost. Maybe, you know, maybe you can hold this if you play it to perfection, but let's see what happens. The time on the clock is not, you know, not abundant. We have rook to a3 by Vasyl. Now comes pawn to c4. The pawns are now marching forward. Knight to e5 and pawn to b5. Further, of course, advancing. We have rook to b3 and now knight to e7. And yeah, this is where the magic happens, and why I've well, mostly why I've decided to cover this game, because I just don't believe this. Now look at this series of moves. We're on move 34, and of course rook to d3 is played. Vasyl offers a trade of rooks, which is not a good deal for him, but I guess he's hoping that if something like rook f4, he's back in the game. A rook trade if happens, Marc Andria is just winning, but he doesn't trade. He plays rook to d5, which is still very good for him. The problem is, after rook to e3, he repeats rook to d4, and Vasyl repeats rook to d3. So again, this is the second time this position occurred. Rook to d5 once again, rook to e3, we have rook to d4, and now rook to d3. This is the third time this position occurred, and Vasyl continues playing it, even though he's lost. He's dead lost here, and he's still playing the position. Now, the proper way to call the arbiter and call, claim that it's a threefold repetition is that before you make the move that makes the position a threefold repetition, you have to call the arbiter and say, okay, this is the position. If I make this move, it's a threefold repetition. I'm claiming a draw. So that is the way to do it, but Vasyl didn't do it. He just played rook to d3, and now Andria played rook captures on d3. So the game continues after the threefold repetition. Knight captures on d3, and now bishop to d5. And this is now the position. Vasyl up the exchange, but he has the two passed pawns to worry about. So let's see what happens. Knight f4 attacking the bishop, bishop to c6, and now rook to d8. Somehow trying to go after the white king, maybe put the rook behind the passed pawns. Knight to d5, stopping that and inviting the trade, but a trade would not really help you. If you trade, just knight captures, c captures on d5, and this is winning for white. I mean, this pawn is coming to b7, and black is without a move for the rest of the game. So after knight d5, knight to d3, and now pawn to b6. Now, once you see the pawn on b6, you know, okay, it's over, but of course we will try. Knight to c5, and now king to g2. Andria starts bringing the king into the game. We have rook to d6, attacks the bishop, bishop to b5. Okay, nicely played. We have rook to e6, and king to f3. We have rook to e1. Maybe you can gobble up some of the king side pawns. If you can eliminate these two and maybe start advancing your passed h-pawn, okay, maybe it's still a game. We have bishop to c6, now preparing to push b7. Now comes rook to c1, going after the c-pawn, and the bishop to b5 defending. We have rook back to e1, knight to c7, and now pawn to h5. And this is somewhat a weird decision, but I guess Vasyl's maybe plan was to somehow eliminate the h-pawn, and then his own passed h-pawn would already be on h5, maybe ready to be pushed forward. But he's already very low on time, so he's making the best out of his position. So knight to a6, offering a trade of knights, which of course Vasyl declines, but that means the c5 square is now covered. Pawn to c5, we have rook to b1 attacking the bishop, but now pawn to c6. You don't even care about the bishop now, because once the bishop is captured, you're just going to win it and then win the rook as well. And then, of course, this endgame is completely winning for white. So after c6, we have knight to d6, now with a double attack on the bishop, but still just bishop to b7. Doesn't matter what you play here, and if you of course capture with the knight, then the rook is no longer guarding the b8 square, so rook captures on b5 is played, and now just b8 queen. We have rook captures on b8, knight captures on b8, and now knight to b5, so Vasyl manages to survive. Now Andria is up only one pawn, and he didn't have to give up any of his pieces. Let's see what happens. King e4, King e8, we have king to d5, and now king to d8. We have king to c5, and knight to c7, and now Andria just played knight to d7, and he was in this position on move 59 that Vasyl Ivanchuk resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Yes, it's only one pawn, but a pawn is enough to win the game. That's how a long time ago Steinitz said that a pawn up in an endgame must be winning, and most of the time it is winning. So here you resign because we could show a nice line. Let's say knight e6, king b6. Okay, you want to play c7 if black allows it. Black of course will not allow it, but now regardless of where you go back, knight to c7 or you go king to c8, now you allow white to go after the king side pawns. And okay, you can defend knight to d8, but then c7, for example. Any move is winning, but this is, I believe, the simplest way to show it. Let's say knight e6, knight captures on c7, and now you go after the king side pawns. The king cannot go here, the knight covers that, so let's say knight to e6, you're going to go king d6, and now knight to d4, you're going to play knight to e5, go after the pawn here, and now knight f5 check, and after the king moves, let's say king to e6, you have to decide whether you allow knight captures the pawn, or you just advance the pawn, or you capture here to guard the pawn, but then you cannot stop the pawn. So, anything is winning here. That's the problem. Even if black can stop the c pawn, there are all of these kingside pawns to worry about, and the knight will easily gobble them up. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Brilliantly done by both of them. But you know, Vasyl said, "I do not want to draw. I do not want to draw. I do not want to draw." So you know, many times throughout the game, he said, "I do not want to draw," and then you know, at a certain point, Andria said, "Well, I don't want to draw either. You know, let's play." And then he just defeats the legend Vasyl Ivanchuk. So very nicely done. And a couple of rounds have been played even after this round. This is from round 3. These are the current standings, and Marc Andria is leading the tournament in sole lead, 4 points ahead of Volodar Murzin with 3.5, David Navara, Parham Maksudlu, Daniel Dartha with 3, with 2.5, Etienne Bakro, Bassem Amin with 2, Shil Musar, Vasyl Ivanchuk with 1.5, and young Faustino Oro still on 0 points, not having any luck against these strong guys. But yeah, it's still, you know, there's still time, so maybe he wins a few. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, brilliant stuff by Marc-André Maurizzi, and I mean, you just gotta love it. Chuky, it's not just that he doesn't want to draw. Even when it is objectively a draw, the position has been repeated for 3 times. He's in a lost position. He doesn't even think about calling a draw because he wants to play chess. He's not here for points. That's the kind of player Chuky is. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Andreas Rosenthal, Andrew Steinel, Yuri Rolchenko, David Ara, and David Gasparian for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.